At Penji is our commitment to helping those who are making sacrifices to help others. Thank you to those making a difference in your community. We are currently accepting applications for Penji for nonprofits. If you know a nonprofit or you are one yourself, head over to penji.co and click on Penji for Good at the bottom of the website to learn how to qualify. If you are listening to this podcast and are not a nonprofit, well, welcome. Become a customer by using the custom coupon code within the podcast show notes. Proceeds of all sales goes directly back to the nonprofit from this interview. Now, back to the show.
Okay, Anthony, for today, before we get the podcast started, tell me, what's the worst advice you've ever gotten? It doesn't have to be about business. It can be just anything that you think has been terrible, terrible advice.
Wow, that's a good one. Yeah, I wasn't expecting that. Don't trust your gut instinct.
Someone said that to you?
Yes, I've had some people say, "Oh, that's your gut instinct. Don't trust it." And every time in my life that I've gone against my gut instinct was correct.
I think that's terrible advice, just because you should know when your instinct is telling you something for a reason.
Well, and I can relate a lot of that to the nonprofit since we founded it and everything. You have a board of directors. You have to listen to them sometimes and give them, I like to politely say, give them the rope to hang themselves, because they're not the ones doing the work. They have great ideas in their perspective, in their world, but in reality, they don't see what I'm dealing with on the day-to-day out at the job site. So that's probably where that comes from. It's been like, okay, I get the way the game is played, and I have to listen to sometimes other opinions. So that's kind of where that comes from, I guess.
Yeah, it's true. And I think that's a great way to get us started on the podcast. Guys, welcome to Unified Purpose. You guys know what we do here. We talk about inspiring tales of compassion, of resilience, and of community spirit. You know me, I'm the host, Daniela, and I'm Penji's partnership coordinator. And we have a great episode for today. We have an amazing guest, Tony Roberts from Steadfast Veterans. Hi, Tony.
Hello, how you doing?
We obviously got the ball rolling a little bit and have been talking, but I want you to introduce yourself and tell everybody watching about what you guys do at Steadfast Veterans, to kind of get us started, and for everyone who's not familiar with what you do, to get an idea.
This has turned out to be my retirement career, building homes for homeless veterans. While I was working as a contractor for the city of Indianapolis, dealing with debris removal, I also maintained what was called the land bank homes for the city of Indianapolis. And during that time, I encountered a squatter that I was sent out to run off from one of the properties. Come to find out, they knew his name and his cell phone number, which I thought was a little unusual for a squatter to have communicated with people. Come to find out, it used to be his parents' house. The family had lost it when the parents died due to taxes and other things. And he knew it wasn't right to be in the house, but he was sleeping in the backyard. And his name was Lewis, and he was a Marine. And I'm a veteran myself, and when I knew about homeless veterans, but I had never looked at it per se. When I saw the issue and the numbers, I decided to do something. So I bought the house from the city of Indianapolis for, I think, $3,000. Turned around and dumped about $65,000, $70,000 in it from donations. And about 90 to 120 days later, turned around and gave it to him and his family to be able to live in. And from that point forward, I've wanted to take care of addressing the homeless veteran issue in our country. So I spent quite a bit of time with the other board of directors and family and friends, figuring out the best way to go about it. And since we didn't have a pressing issue for us at the time, we decided to build the best nonprofit we thought we could.
I'm I'm really curious about this topic, Anthony, because I'm not American. I don't live in the States. Um, and I've heard that, like there's a lot of veterans kind of when they come back from war or they come back from like service or whatever in the US, they struggle with getting jobs and homelessness. My question to you is, I'm not familiar with the military system in the United States, but I don't understand why this happens. Like, where does this issue come from that so many people are kind of left hanging in the air once they're back to being civilians?
Boy, that is a loaded question.
Sorry.
First part, while in the service, very structured. You know what time you wake up, you go to bed, you eat breakfast, etc. You know somebody else has decided your daily schedule. You do not decide it. They tell you when to jump, how high, and how often. That's the basics of that. The other part is the military enlisted and officer people, they're all volunteer now. We got rid of the draft many years ago. I think the last member of the draft got out 15 years ago, 10. Don't hold me to that. That's just a vague memory. So everybody that's there is there for a choice. And there's some that want to travel that join for that. But quite honestly, I think the majority of people that sign up to serve our country, it's a duty of service. They have an obligation themselves. A lot of them are doing it for the education benefits. And I think they go in there thinking more about the education than what could happen to me while I'm in there.
That happens here in El Salvador with priesthood. We have we have a big Catholic community. A lot of people go into to study to become nuns and priests because of education too, and housing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, think about it. If you're a very good example is I went to, while I was a contractor for the city, one of the guys who worked there was a Marine, had a TBI, traumatic brain injury. And during the time there, his mother passed away. So we all decided to go down and support him for his mother's funeral. Now, mind you, I was born and raised in Indiana. I'm not blind to what goes on here. The town that Marine was from, it had a one pump gas station store. It would have been an old general store for most people back 50, 60 years ago. The nearest Walmart for them was over an hour away. And I started thinking about this. I'm going,
Way convenient.
well, I asked him, I said, where does everybody work here? Oh, they work at a plant about 45 minutes away. And I said, how easy is it to get a job? Oh, you got to be on a waiting list. So I'm starting, that's what I would call our working poor class that we have in our country in some areas. This kid gets out of high school, wants to do something, doesn't want to just sit at home and do anything. Military recruiter comes in and says, hey, we'll give you room, board, health care, 4 weeks vacation, and we'll even train you in what you need to do. What do you think those kids jump on the bandwagon?
Yeah, they're just going.
Yeah. So that's one reason they go in. A lot of them, they do it because their parents. I went in because my grandfather on both sides served in World War II. My mother's father actually survived the Battle of the Bulge in the Army.
Wow.
He went in the Army with jet black hair, two Purple Hearts, shot in the head, came home with white hair. Yeah. I think the reality that there are some service members, they make bad choices. But I want to be honest. But there's also regular people that are homeless that have made bad choices also. So there's that part. The other part is when you get out, you're used to that structure. You don't fit in the 9-to-5 world. You don't fit in with the micromanagement people that you know, the big fish in the little pond scenario, you don't put up with it. If it looks like a duck and quacks like a duck, they've called it a duck for many years. And in the outside world, they call that a manager. So that's one reason I feel they don't fit in. And then you have people that have been in roles that have never served, follow orders. They have a personal issue with what the military does because what they see in our media and around the world, they seem to forget that nobody in that military chose to go do some of the things they did. They were told to go do them. And I think that's where people lose track of, you may not like what the commander-in-chief does, but he's the commander-in-chief for a reason, and he gives orders, and it's your job to follow him.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like a big military kind of thing is to not question things and to just follow orders. I understand that perspective of military, because if you're in the middle of a war and a battle, you can't really be having a debate of whether, the ethics or the logistics or an opinion of something. But I can understand how, like, sort of having that mentality in the real world, outside of that, military and mindset can be difficult to sort of adapt to.
Yeah. And then there are some people that I can't remember the name of the movie, but it was an older, it's probably 10 plus years ago. Kid signed up to be in the Army. He wanted to be a medic. He didn't want to carry a gun. So he fought back and forth. He goes, look, I don't want to take a life. I want to help.
Yeah.
And that's part of it. Is I think sometimes the younger people sign up to go in the military and get put in positions because they do follow the orders. They're thriving on all these other aspects of life. And they wind up having to do something that they struggle with personally. And that winds up haunting them, the PTSD, doing things that you didn't want to do, sign up for, but you did it. And that's a hard thing for a lot of people to live with. And my father was in the Air Force, a crew chief during Korea on a helicopter. They didn't call it PTSD back then. They called it shell shock, all these other things, and only late in his life did I learn about some things that he had a young son at home, my older brother. He watched the pilot of his helicopter shoot a small child approaching the helicopter. The pilot made the right decision because the parents had put a bomb on the back of the child to try to take out the helicopter. That set my father off on a life of dealing with PTSD that he never even understood. So that's a good example of somebody who's in the Air Force, being a mechanic, witnessed something that dramatically changed the course of his life, his family's life, and his children.
Yeah, I think we don't talk enough about trauma, and how much it's going to influence the way that you interact with the world. It happens on like a smaller scale with things like how your parents raise you, or like it happens too for more mundane things. What I mean, like, I can't imagine having to witness something like that, or even being the person who I can't imagine what it must have felt like for the pilot who had to shoot a child. Um, and having to translate that into sort of moving on and then just having to live your day as if nothing happened. That's impossible.
Well, and that's where I think when they come back, all the veterans are processing with something like that in some way, shape, or form. And then there's a lot of them that get physically injured. Well, let's take pain medicine. Let's do this. Well, we all know there was an opioid epidemic that doctors were prescribing opioids like crazy. Here, take your oxy, take your oxy. Well, yeah, that put the pain away. Then what did that do? That created an addict on the other hand. Then the addict couldn't go to work. The addict lost the job. The addict snapped at his wife, snapped at his kids, loses his wife and marriage. Now he's sitting on the side of the street, homeless, no income. You see how it's just a vicious circle?
Yeah, it's just a bunch of problems that one on top of the other.
Well, and
Complicated.
something I always make sure to tell people, because I've done quite a few speaking engagements, and people will say, well, what are you going to do if? I don't live in the ifs. My mentality is if we provide a standalone 1-bedroom, 1-bath home for a veteran to call their home, taking care of them mentally, physically, holistically will come. But if you don't have that roof over your head, you don't know where you're going to take a shower or cook your meal, can you really heal mentally? No, you never can. There are some that I would be kidding if I said no veteran will never overdose in one of our homes. I can't tell you that. I would hope that by providing that home and all the community amenities that we're going to wind up offering, they would see the light not to do that. But, you can wish all you want.
You can't control a lot of things. Yeah.
No. And the other thing I do point out, to make it short and sweet, I think the military needs to do a better job on transitioning service members out of service. I think they could do a better job. And I think some of the veterans that are in the homeless situation, that I don't even think they know a good number of how many homeless veterans we have. It fluctuates between 50 and 60,000 when they count in January every year. But I also don't think it properly reflects the number of female homeless veterans we have in our country. Because if you just break down the numbers statistically, if you have X number of men in the military and X number of women, my mind would say there should be a proportionate number of both genders homeless.
Yeah. And then
And
you're seeing
there's,
female.
sorry, go ahead.
No, I was asking if you don't see females in the numbers.
No, you don't. And when you talk to people, if you think about it, put yourself in this situation. If your family, friends, anybody knew you were homeless in your community, are they going to be more apt to put you on a couch before a guy?
Probably, yeah.
Right. So they're still homeless, and they're should be counted that way, but they're couch surfing. They stay at one friend's for 2 to 3 weeks, or somebody says, hey, I'm going on vacation for 6 weeks. Can you stay at my house and take care of it? So they never hit the statistics of that aspect.
Yeah. I have a question because, okay, so I'm from El Salvador. Over here, we have a lot of homeless problems in general, a lot of poverty, and that kind of makes a lot of programs for housing very popular. What has happened in the past is that there have been numerous nonprofits that have tried to do that kind of like building houses for people thing. But we've run into the issue in this country of providing housing for someone and then that person drowns because they don't know what to do with it. They don't have the money to keep up with this house. They don't have a lot of the people that a lot of nonprofits provide housing for here tend to be of low income, and don't have access to education and things like that. So they struggle with the finance of it. They struggle with a lot of different things. And sometimes people have come out and said that getting this house was the worst nightmare that they could have had because it gave them a lot more problems than when they were living in like the street or something. I wonder if this happens to you as well, because I think it's a very common problem with the model of providing housing for people.
Well, I kind of equate the scenario you just described. You can give somebody a car, but
Yeah.
if they don't know how to change the oil, check the air pressure, or better yet, that there's a door on one side with a cap on it, you have to put gas in it every time you drive it. If you don't teach them that aspect, you can't expect them to keep the car running in good condition for a long period of time. What we do, when I told you we took some time to build what I felt is one of the best nonprofits, if you look at the homeless veteran, there's two aspects of it. There's the housing issue and what we call the wraparound services, emotional, physical, financial, and addiction, where they address all those. You would be shocked at how many of the groups that provide wraparound services do not provide housing. Oh, let's let the private landlords take care of that. Let's do this, that. Well, when you're talking about a rental, because the federal government, if the veteran qualifies, gets what's called a HUD-VASH voucher, which is basically the government steps in and pays their rent for them for a period of time to get them rehabilitated and get them in a position to buy a house, maintain rent, all of those things you're talking about that didn't get addressed that led to disaster 101 of just giving somebody a home. The wraparound services are provided by another agency. All we do is provide the homes. We own the homes, we maintain them. Our homes are 525 square feet, 1 bedroom, 1 bath. Every time you've seen a tiny home, you probably see how they've got the bed shoved into 2 corners.
Yeah.
Not our bedroom. You can put a nightstand on both sides, walk around the bed. The bathroom is large enough, a wheelchair can go in there. But in reality, if a veteran needs a wheelchair, they're going to be in a different level of care, either assisted living facility or a nursing home. This is for the ambulatory veterans to be able to get their feet back under them. But we as Steadfast own the homes, maintain them, and we collect the rent from the government for the homes, and that's how we continue to grow.
Yeah. I mean, I think I can imagine that a veteran would also need time to adjust if they come home with an injury. I know people come back without limbs, which is a huge adjustment. If you've been living with 4 limbs for your entire life, to figure out how to do your life when you're missing legs or arms or just in general have massive injuries. So I can imagine that there needs to be some sort of period and just in general a whole mix of things to help that person kind of get set up to a point where they can be stable, like you said.
Well, the other thing that we have realized and seen, there's a lot of good groups doing a lot of good things for our
Yeah.
homeless and our homeless veterans. I tried to look at it from a different perspective of, for example, if a company donates or sponsors money for a home, it only goes to the construction of that home. It doesn't go to the executive director's pay. It doesn't pay for the office phones, etc. It's completely separated on both aspects, that donations only go to the construction, because that's one thing we all started looking at. You look at American Red Cross and these other places, sometimes you're looking at 30 to 40 cents on the dollar that is donated, which I understand American Red Cross, they've got thousands of vehicles. Well, they got to pay insurance for them. And it's got to come out of somewhere. So it's not bad that they're spending that, but it's the model that was created. And that's where we looked at this completely different, is how do we build a model that's different right out of the gate? And we're kind of unique because, like I said, we've got the donations coming in on the left hand, and then the right hand, the federal government pays the HUD-VASH voucher rent for the veteran. That's the other side that pays the staff, growth, and pays for the money we've borrowed to build the homes.
That's amazing. I think people don't realize that a lot when they talk about nonprofit work, or how to provide help for nonprofit, is that it's not just in the support of the mission itself with kind of volunteer stuff like that, which is obviously great and always welcome. But I think a lot of times people tend to overlook the business or the logistical side of it, I guess. A nonprofit is very much like being a business owner. You have employees, you have people that are depending on you. You need desk work. You need that just as much as you need someone in the field working in, building that home, but also you need someone who's doing all of the other stuff that you would do for a normal company, right?
Oh, yeah. And I have not ran a nonprofit before. I have gotten a PhD in Nonprofit 101 over the past 6-7 years. I've done a lot of studying, taken courses and other things. A good example, a guy named Dan Pallotta. I have watched a lot of his videos and read his books. People do not understand. He talked about a story of a lady who was the CEO or president of the Boys and Girls Club here in America. Well, if you talk about a private business, somebody who generates or doubles your income as your business, doubles your customer base, doubles everything. That CEO gets rewarded very nicely in our private business model.
Yeah.
That lady was basically ran out of the position because, just for numbers' sake, and I don't want to quote him, let's say the year she came in, they were servicing 100,000 kids and they were getting donations of $500,000. Well, a couple of years into it, now she's getting donations in the millions. So she's bringing in more revenue. That's her job, bring in more revenue. And her other job is to serve the kids. Well, now she went from serving 100,000 kids to 300,000 to 400,000 kids. Anybody in the private industry, the board of directors would be showering that director or the person with large sums of money because they're doing the right job.
Yeah.
But because she was in the private nonprofit world, oh, you shouldn't earn that type of money. She earned it. She increased everything. Everything was positive to where it should be. But it was the perception is that people don't think you should earn that type of money. And what he was referring to is those level of executives that should be working in the nonprofit industry, stay in the private industry. They donate $100,000 of their salary every year to a nonprofit they want to sit on the board of and be involved. They don't have to take the criticism of how little they get paid or how much they're getting paid. They can sit on the board and tell the executive director what to do. They look like a champion, and the nonprofits really aren't benefiting.
Yeah, I think like that happens a lot where like I think we don't realize that a lot of these big businesses that do a lot of this like nonprofit board of director member things, and like you said, donations, um, are really doing it for self convenience and not necessarily for are actually providing help to whatever mission they're allegedly supporting. I know of that. That happens a lot where like, like they'll, like you said, put a lot of money, but then not concern themselves with anything. Or like you said, if it were like a private business and you had like a really good employee working in a private business, it would be a completely different treatment than if it's for a nonprofit. Um, Also, I think we tend to overlook the reality that a lot of these companies can write these donations off as tax. A lot of them can do it for taxes and PR because it's great for PR if you're a big company to say, "Oh, we regularly donate to blah blah blah." Um, and like we are a sort of a part of this nonprofit, and it's going to be great for your marketing. It's going to be great for like the promotional stuff, and you can write it off into taxes. But at no point in that conversation is the nonprofit in question being addressed. It's just helping this other business that's already big grow more, if that makes sense.
Well, I reached out to some American manufacturers for insulation. None of them were interested in helping. I reached out to a German company that has a manufacturing plant here in Indiana called Noth Insulation. I was shocked. They're donating all the insulation for all 17 of our homes. Okay, just think about that. A German-owned company sees the need for helping U.S. veterans. but yet an American company does not. That's where they've lost sight of things. And I didn't ask them for money. That's the other thing when being in the construction industry, I don't need money. Maybe just either donate the material or let me pay cost for it. Because even in this day and age, I know every business is struggling things, but if I can eliminate the retailer and pay the manufacturer just the cost of the goods to them, well, that has saved us thousands of dollars in this build process.
It's still more helpful than having to, kind of go through different kind of suppliers. And I think what can be kind of frustrating about a lot of companies is that I can understand if you're a business that is small, growing, struggling to do something like this and can't provide stuff in a large scale. But I think there's plenty of big businesses that have more than enough, and choose not to do so. And I think that's where, a lot of criticism can come in.
Well, I look at it this way. I know over here, I don't know about El Salvador. Every April 15th, you hear people crying and moaning that they don't want to pay their taxes. But none of them think about it till next April 15th. Choose where you spend your money.
Yeah.
If you can choose where you spend it out of a business's perspective, look into some different nonprofits. Take advantage of it. You're not going to completely get out of paying taxes, period. But I often say, would you rather give a check to the U.S. government for $1 million in taxes where you have no say over what happens, which I'm sure you've caught wind of some of the stuff that's been going on up here lately.
Yeah.
They're finding that it's just being waste, or maybe you donate $750,000 to other people. You're still paying that $1 million, but you only give them $250,000, and now you have control where it goes.
And what it's being used for. Yeah.
Exactly. And I think sometimes people get in the middle of personal finances and work. They don't want to mess with it. They don't even want to take the time to go find them. They just would rather write the check, be done, because they want to make that money.
Yeah, I think like it's complicated. I think in capitalist societies, and I think businesses in general, when they're considering growth, they tend to lose sight of values because I don't think it's like an American thing or a thing in like a countries. I just think it's like the kind of hustle culture that exists with growing a business, and like a constant competition that is happening with all the other people that are also trying to grow their business and get rich. Um, and that kind of clouds visions. And then I think as businesses continue to grow and more people join the company and like more stuff like that happens, they tend to lose sight. And then it sort of snowballs into things like this.
Yeah. And it is, I agree with you completely. I understand how we get here, but
Yeah.
one part that has just blown me away is the construction industry, in my opinion, and has guilty of one major problem. Well, why do you do that? It's how we've always done it. But does that mean it's with the technology we have now, is that the best way to do it? Oh, I don't know. That's just the best way we've been doing it, and that's the way I'm going to run my business.
Yeah, people are I think that happens with a lot of industries. I think people are very kind of reluctant to change or do things because they're not used to it. But I think it's always important to check yourself. It's always important to check what's going on around you. There's people who have more control, more power, more privilege than others, right? There's a lot of inequality. There's like people who can do more, and there's people who can do nothing. There's people who can do very little. Um, Depending on the position that you are in, the money that you have, like there's a lot of different factors. And I think you should always try to keep those things in mind, keep those things present, and think about what you can do with what you have to help someone else. Even if even if it's just opening the door for someone in the street and that's all you can do, it's going to make a difference than choosing to be blind and do nothing regarding a lot of different issues. Um, and I think stuff like helping with housing, like you said, is probably something that feels really big, but there are things that everybody can do that are not necessarily going to be like going in and building the house yourself, like you said.
Well, and the other thing I've realized, the hardest nonprofit to start and run is a housing one,
Yeah.
because I had a good friend of mine. He and I were talking in the early stages, and he just started laughing at me, and we've known each other for 20 some years. And I said, "What's so funny?" He goes, "You're so stupid. You think you started a nonprofit." He goes, "You're a real estate developer. Quit kidding yourself." And I sit there and I thought about it. I'm like, yeah, he's right. I I'm a real estate developer that's winding up helping homeless veterans. All of the other real estate developers are more interested in how many lots can I get out of this area and how much money can I make.
Yeah, and like I mean, obviously a real estate developer is going to be more focused on who is the most, the person's going to pay me more for this lot, right?
Well, and I did something unique is when I was dealing with the city for the approval, the battalion fire chief for the area came to me because there was debate on whether the road needed to be wider for the fire engine to fit down it. And I really was not looking forward to it because the road itself could have cost me well over $100,000. In talking to him, he goes, "There's a new fire sprinkler thing we could put in that I would really like to see you do. And if you put it in, we can leave the road that's here." I was like, "That's a fair trade." But I joked with him and I said, "Every time I've heard the word fire sprinkler together, all I see is dollar signs."
Yeah.
Come to find out, this new fire sprinkler system, it's really not new. It's just a different application of it designed just for residential stuff or residential homes. Doesn't hardly cost me anything more to put in. If you look at the total cost of the home, it's not even 1% of it to have fire sprinklers. And I learned the other day, I'm the first home builder in the state of Indiana to willingly put fire sprinklers in the homes. That just blows my mind.
Yeah, I think like we should probably be more concerned a lot of times with safety, well-being, overall comfort over financial gain. Unfortunately, we live in a world where I think money goes first and everything goes second.
Yep.
I think that's not a great note to end it on, but a sad one, I guess. But before we end it, Tony, I want to give you the space that to promote something, to plug anything, to talk to our audience. If anything resonated with them, if they want to work with you, if they want to donate, if they want to get to know more about you, the space is yours to tell them where to go.
You can find us at steadfastveterans.org. That's a place you can go to. If you choose to donate, you can do it there. One thing I do want to stress, like I mentioned before, 100% of the donations go to the build process. They will pay the general contractor, permits, electricians, plumbers, supplies, etc. It will go to an electrician's paycheck, but I think that's fair. We're getting a good out of it. It's not going to run our organization. Other than that, I just really want to stress people to be good humans and take care of other people and think of other people first sometimes, because I think what you mentioned, we don't do that enough.
Yeah, I will be adding the links to to your website to the description of the video so that people can easily access it and contact you if anybody that's listening to this podcast had anything that they wanted to do, and they're going to be able to easily get to you.
That
Yes,
works for me.
Thank you so much for being on the podcast today. It was so good to learn from you and hear about this mission, especially from someone who is not American, but I see this issue happening a lot. So I was actually very curious to hear more about it. Thank you so much for being on the podcast today.
Thank you for having me.
Have a great day, everybody. I will see you on the next episode.
You've been listening to Unified Purpose, brought to you by Penji. Check out the show notes to learn more about today's guest. And to learn more about Penji, the human-first creative subscription service, head over to penji.co. And by the way, if you're still listening, it would mean the absolute world to us if you were to share this podcast with a friend and, of course, subscribe.